The command center of the Stellar Alliance was filled with the anxious murmurs of military personnel. Supreme Commander Vax stood at the center of the room, his arms crossed over his chest. His silver skin was paler than usual, a clear sign that he had not rested in many days. Around him, dozens of officers spoke in urgent tones, pointing at holographic maps that showed crimson zones spreading across the galaxy like a virulent plague. The Vorath Horde had breached another defensive perimeter. 3 more colonies had fallen in the past month. The Alliance was running out of soldiers, running out of ships, and running out of hope. Vax studied the tactical display and felt something he had never experienced in his 3 centuries of life. He felt defeat creeping into his dual hearts. The massive doors of the command center slid open and Ambassador Ilera walked in. She was diminutive for a Zillion with pale lavender skin and large golden eyes. She had been absent for nearly a year on a mission that most had considered futile. She had gone searching for a legend. "Supreme Commander," Ilera said, her voice cutting through the noise. "I have returned." Vax turned to face her. "Ambassador, I trust your search for ancient myths was productive." The room grew quiet. Everyone knew about the old stories. Ancient records spoke of a species from a world called Terra, a death world where gravity was crushing, and the air was toxic, and the creatures killed each other for survival. The beings from this world were said to be impossible. They could recover from injuries that would kill any other species. They could run for days without rest. They experienced pain but did not cease fighting. They formed connections with anyone, even their adversaries. But Terra had vanished from the star charts thousands of years ago. Most believed the stories were religious allegories or warnings to children. Nobody believed humans were real. "They are real," Ilera said simply. "I found Terra and they're coming here." The silence in the room became absolute. Vax stepped closer to Ilera. "You expect me to believe that the monsters from our oldest tales are real? That the Death World legends are true?" "I expect you to see for yourself," Ilera replied. "Their vessel will arrive within the hour." Vax wanted to laugh. He wanted to dismiss this as madness, but he was desperate, and desperate leaders considered things they would normally ignore. 1 hour later, a ship appeared near the station. It was small compared to Alliance vessels, gray and angular with strange markings on its hull. The ship requested permission to dock, and Vax granted it mostly out of curiosity. He gathered his senior officers and went to the docking bay. He expected to see monsters, creatures of nightmare, beings that matched the terrifying stories. What he saw instead made him want to laugh. The humans were small. They stood on only 2 legs with only 2 arms. Their skin came in various shades of brown and pink, soft and without scales or armor. They had hair on their heads like decorative fur. They wore simple gray uniforms and carried weapons that looked almost primitive. At the front of the group stood a male human with short dark hair and calm brown eyes. He was not tall. He was not impressive. He looked like something Vax could break with one hand. "I am Commander Alex Chun," the human said. "On behalf of Terra and the United Human Federation, I thank you for receiving us." Vax looked down at the small creature. "You are the legendary humans, the Death World warriors." Alex Chun smiled. It was a small expression, just a slight movement of his mouth. "I know we are not what you expected, but I promise you, Supreme Commander, we are exactly what your war needs." Over the next several hours, the humans explained their offer. They had monitored the war against the Vorath from afar. They knew the Alliance was losing. They offered military assistance, soldiers, and weapons and tactics in exchange for star charts, trade agreements, and a place in galactic society. Vax listened, but he did not believe. These soft creatures could not possibly be the warriors of legend. They were too small, too fragile, too calm. Real warriors had fire in their eyes. These humans just had patience. "Very well," Vax said at last. "I will accept your offer, but I will not waste real soldiers protecting you while you learn how warfare functions. I am assigning your forces to the outpost on Xylos. It is far from the front lines. You will be safe there." He expected the human commander to argue, to demand a more important position, to show the pride that warriors usually displayed. Instead, Alex Chun just nodded. "We accept your assignment, Supreme Commander." Thank you for the opportunity. Vax frowned. This was not how warriors behaved. Perhaps the legends were just legends after all. As the humans turned to leave, one of Vax's officers leaned close to him. Sir, are you certain about this? Whether the old stories are true? Vax watched the small humans walking away. The female one, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, was already studying a datapad, her eyes moving quickly across the screen. The large male, called Sergeant Marcus, Riley, was checking his weapon with practiced hands. The young one, Private James Walker, was looking around the station with wide, curious eyes, like a child seeing the ocean for the first time. Look at them, Vax said quietly. They are soft. They are small. They have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. The stories were exaggerations. Religious nonsense. These humans will hide on Xylos until the war ends. One way or another. He turned away from the docking bay and walked back toward the command center, where the map still showed the crimson tide of Vorath spreading across the galaxy. Behind him, Commander Alexchen glanced back at the retreating Supreme Commander. Sarah Mitchell moved to stand beside him. He thinks we are weak, she said quietly. Good, Alex replied. Let him think that. And when the Vorath come? Alexchen looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was moving, consuming, destroying. Somewhere out there, a fight was waiting for them. When the Vorath come, he said, they will learn the same lesson every enemy of humanity has learned for 1,000,000 years. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Which lesson is that? Alex turned and walked toward their ship, his voice calm and certain. That the race that survived Terra does not know how to quit. The moon of Xylos was cold and gray. Wind swept across rocky plains, and the sky was always the color of aged metal. The outpost there had been quiet for years. The zillion soldiers stationed there had grown bored and complacent. Nothing ever happened on Xylos. Then the humans arrived. 200 of them came down in transport ships, carrying crates of equipment and weapons. War leader Kale watched them from the outpost walls. He was old for a zillion, nearly 400 years, and he had fought in more battles than he could remember. He had earned his title through blood and sacrifice. He had also read the old stories about humans when he was young. He had believed them once. Now, watching these small, soft creatures unload their ships, he felt foolish for ever believing. They look like prey animals, said one of the soldiers. Kale nodded slowly. They do, but prey animals do not travel across stars to fight wars. There must be something more to them. Perhaps the old stories confused them with another species. Perhaps, Kale said, but something in his gut told him to wait and watch. The humans settled into the outpost quickly. They did not complain about the cold or the wind or the poor food. They simply adapted. Within 3 days, they had improved the defensive walls, set up new sensor stations, and begun training routines that made the zillion soldiers stop and stare. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell spent her time studying Vorath battle records. She sat in the command center for hours, watching footage of old battles, taking notes, drawing diagrams. One evening, Kale found her there alone. You study the enemy, he said. Sarah did not look up from her screen. I study their patterns. The Vorath are a collective consciousness. They think together. That means they have habits, routines. If I can find those patterns, I can predict what they will do. Kale moved closer. Our strategists have studied the Vorath for decades. They found no patterns. Your strategists look for individual thinking, Sarah replied. The Vorath do not think like individuals. They think like weather, like a storm, and storms have patterns. She pointed to her screen. It showed a map of Vorath attacks over 50 years. Lines connected the attacks, forming shapes that Kale had never noticed before. They always attack in spirals, Sarah said. They start from the outside and move inward. They test defenses before committing their main force, and they always leave one escape route open so they can retreat if needed. Kale stared at the map. He had fought the Vorath for 100 years and had never seen this. How long did it take you to find this? For days. Kale said nothing. He turned and walked away, his thoughts heavy. Meanwhile, Private James Walker had made a friend, a young Zillion soldier named Arwell was assigned to show the humans around the base. RYO was nervous around the strange aliens at first, but James's friendly smile put him at ease. "Your people have strange customs," RYL said one evening as they shared a meal. "You touch each other often. You make sounds with your mouths that mean nothing." James laughed. "You mean laughing? It is how we show happiness." "Why would you show happiness? Is that not a weakness? Enemies could use it against you." James thought about this. Maybe, but keeping happiness inside makes it smaller. Sharing it makes it bigger. Humans believe a connection makes us stronger, not weaker. RYL did not understand, but he found himself liking this strange, small creature. In the training yard, Sergeant Marcus, Riley was modifying weapons. He had taken apart Zillion rifles and human rifles and was building something new. A hybrid weapon that combined the power of Zillion energy cells with the precision of human targeting systems. A group of Zillion soldiers watched him work. "Why do you change everything?" one asked. "Because everything can be better," Marcus replied without stopping. "Humans do not accept things as they are. We ask how they could be improved. But the Zillion design is proven. It has worked for centuries." Marcus looked up with a small smile. "Centuries ago, humans lived in caves and hunted with sharp rocks. We improved. Always improving is what we do." He finished the weapon and handed it to the nearest Zillion soldier. "Try it." The soldier fired at a target across the yard. The shot was faster, more accurate, and more powerful than any Zillion rifle could produce. The soldier stared at the weapon in his hands like it was magic. War Leader Kale watched all of this. He watched the female human find patterns no one else could see. He watched the young human form bonds with alien soldiers. He watched a large human improve technology that had not changed in centuries. One night, he approached Commander Alex Chun. "Your people confuse me," Kale admitted. "You are small and soft. You have no natural weapons. Yet you act like you have already won every battle." Alex looked at the old warrior. "Can I tell you something about Terra, War Leader?" Kale nodded. "Our world tried to kill us every day for millions of years. The heat, the cold, the storms, the predators, the diseases. Everything on Terra wanted humans dead. And we survived. Not because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we never stopped trying. We fell down and we got back up. Every single time." He paused. "That is what we are. We are the species that does not quit." Kale was about to respond when alarms began screaming across the base. Both of them ran to the command center, where Sarah Mitchell was staring at a sensor screen with wide eyes. "A Vorath fleet," she said. "A big one. They changed course. They are coming here." Kale felt his blood turn cold. "How many?" "Thousands of ships. Maybe 50,000 ground troops." The outpost had less than 2,000 soldiers. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Alexton studied the screen calmly. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to Supreme Commander Vax. Tell him we need reinforcements immediately." The message was sent. The response came within minutes. "Supreme Commander Vax says our sensors must be wrong," the officer reported. "He says the Vorath would never attack Xylos. It has no strategic value. He's not sending reinforcements." The room fell silent. Kale looked at the human commander. "What do we do now?" Alexton looked at the sensor screen, showing the approaching swarm. Then he looked at his soldiers. Then he looked at the Zillion warriors who had mocked him for weeks. "Now," he said quietly, "we show them what humans really are." The sky above Xylos turned black with Vorath ships. They came down like rain. Thousands of drop pods crashing into the rocky plains around the outpost. Each pod burst open to release a dozen Vorath warriors. The Vorath were nightmares made flesh. They stood on 6 legs with bodies covered in hard black shells. Their heads had no eyes, only a cluster of sensing organs that could detect heat and movement. Their mouths were filled with teeth designed for tearing meat from bone. They moved together like one creature with many bodies, the collective consciousness controlling every action. War Leader Kale stood on the outpost wall and watched them form into attack groups. He had fought the Vorath many times. He knew what came next. "We should begin evacuation," he told Commander Alex Chun. Standard Zillion doctrine is to preserve forces when outnumbered. We retreat, regroup, and fight another day. Alex Chun did not take his eyes off the enemy. How many times has that strategy worked? Kale was silent. The truth was painful. Every time the Zillions retreated, they lost more ground. The Vorath never stopped advancing. Humans do not retreat, Alex said. We dig in and we hold. That is suicide. Alex finally looked at the old warrior. No, that is how we win. He turned to his soldiers, who were already in position along the walls. 200 humans against 50,000 Vorath. The math was impossible. Listen up, Alex called out. Today, we show the galaxy what Terra taught us. We do not run. We do not quit. We do not die easy. Make every shot count. Watch your team and remember why we are here. Sarah Mitchell moved to his side. Sir, I have identified their command nodes. The Vorath collective consciousness needs coordination points. If we hit those, we disrupt their communication. Alex nodded. Show me. Sarah pointed to clusters of larger Vorath scattered among the Horde. Those bigger ones. They relay commands from the central mind. Take them out, and the swarm becomes confused. That's the word to all snipers. Priority targets. The first wave of Vorath charged. They came screaming across the plain. Thousands of black shapes moving as one. The sound was terrible. A high-pitched shriek that hurt the ears and froze the blood. The Zillion soldiers on the walls hesitated. They had heard that sound before. They knew what it meant. The humans did not hesitate. Sergeant Marcus wryly opened fire with his modified rifle. The first shot took a command node through the center of its body. The Vorath around it stumbled, suddenly confused. Other human snipers followed, picking off command nodes with precise shots. The swarm slowed. The humans had hurt its brain, but the Vorath adapted. New command nodes moved forward, and the charge resumed. They hit the walls like a wave hitting a cliff. Vorath warriors climbed over each other, tried to reach the defenders. Their claws scraped against stone. Their teeth snapped at anything they could reach. Private James Walker stood at his position, firing down into the massive bodies. Fear pumped through his veins, but his hands were steady. His training held. A Vorath made it over the wall beside him. James turned and shot it twice before it could strike. Another came behind it. James shot that one, 2, then 3 more. He kept shooting until his weapon overheated. Then he grabbed a fallen Zillion rifle and kept shooting with that. Beside him, Arwyel the young Zillion watched in amazement. Human soldiers were everywhere, moving between positions, filling gaps, helping fallen comrades back to their feet. They fought like they had no fear. How do you do this? Arwyel shouted over the noise. How are you not afraid? James slammed a new power cell into his rifle. I am afraid. I am so afraid I want to scream. But fear does not stop humans. Fear makes us fight harder. Across the wall, Marcus Riley held a choke point alone. Vorath poured through a breach in the wall, and Marcus stood in their path with nothing but his rifle and his stubborn will. He took a claw strike to his shoulder. Blood poured down his arm. He kept firing. He took another strike to his leg. He dropped to one knee. He kept firing. For 11 minutes, he held that breach alone. 11 minutes of pain and blood and impossible determination. When reinforcements finally reached him, they found him still shooting, surrounded by dead Vorath, standing in a pool of his own blood. Medic, someone shouted. Marcus shook his head. Not yet. Seal the breach first. Dr. Lisa Chun ran medical stations behind the lines. Wounded soldiers, both human and Zillion, were brought to her constantly. She worked without stopping, patching wounds, setting bones, and sending soldiers back into fight. A badly wounded Zillion grabbed her arm. Why do you not flee? You are not warriors. You are soft. You should save yourselves. Lisa paused her work, just long enough to look at him. 3 million years ago, my ancestors were hunted by everything on our planet. Lions, wolves, snakes, disease, weather. Everything wanted to kill us. We survived by never giving up and by taking care of each other. That is what humans are. We take care of our own. She finished treating his wound. Now get back out there. Your friends need you. The first wave broke against the walls of the outpost. Thousands of Vorath lay dead on the rocky ground. The defenders had lost fewer than 50. War leader Kale stood among the human soldiers, covered in enemy blood, his ancient body tired, but his spirit strangely alive. He had never seen anything like this. The humans fought like the myth said. No, they fought better than the myth said. Commander Alex walked along the wall checking on his soldiers. He reached Kale and stopped. The first wave is done, Alex said. They will send another and another until we break or they run out of bodies. Kale looked at the human commander. I have fought for 300 years. I have never seen any species fight like yours. Alex shrugged. We are just getting started. On the horizon, more Vorath drop pods fell from the sky. The second wave was forming, bigger than the first. Kale felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt hope. What is your command? He asked. Alex watched the enemy gathering. His soldiers reloaded their weapons and checked their positions. None of them talked about retreat. None of them talked about surrender. We hold this line, Alex said. No matter what comes, we hold. The second wave began its charge, and the humans of Terra stood ready to meet it. 3 days. 3 days of constant battle. 3 days without rest, without silence, without peace. The Vorath came in waves that never seemed to end. Day and night meant nothing to the swarm. They attacked in the light and in the dark, probing for weakness, looking for the moment when the defenders would break. The humans did not break. Commander Alex walked through the outpost on the second night. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, and his body ached from wounds he had not had time to treat. But he kept walking, checking on his soldiers, speaking words of encouragement, making sure everyone knew they were not alone. He found Marcus Riley at a medical station arguing with Dr. Lisa Chun. I need to get back to the wall, Marcus was saying. His shoulder was wrapped in bandages, and his leg was held together with metal supports. You have lost too much blood, Lisa said firmly. You need rest. I will rest when we win. Alex put a hand on Marcus's good shoulder. Rest for 4 hours. That is an order. We need you alive tomorrow, not dead today. Marcus wanted to argue, but he saw something in his commander's eyes. Trust. Alex trusted him to be there when it mattered most. For hours, Marcus agreed. Then I am back on the wall. Elsewhere, Sarah Mitchell was planning something dangerous. She gathered a small team of soldiers, both human and Zillion, in a quiet corner of the base. The Vorath have a main coordination point, she explained, pointing to a map. It is in their landing zone about 2 kilometers north. If we destroy it, we cut the head off the snake. The swarm will fall apart. War leader Kale studied the map. Getting there would be suicide. The ground between here and there is covered with Vorath. Sarah smiled. It was not a nice smile. Humans invented something called the night raid. We move in small groups in the dark using terrain for cover. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we disappear before they know what happened. This is madness. This is how humans have won wars for 10,000 years. Kale looked at the others in the room. They were young soldiers who had fought beside humans for 3 days. They had seen things they never thought possible. They had watched humans take wounds that should have killed them and keep fighting. They had watched humans laugh in the face of death. I will go with you, Kale said. The raid left at midnight. 20 soldiers moving through the darkness like ghosts. Sarah Mitchell led them. Her eyes adapted to the low light, her movements silent and precise. They passed within meters of Vorath patrols without being detected. They crawled through trenches filled with dead bodies. They held their breath as enemy warriors walked directly over their hiding spots. It took 3 hours to reach the coordination point. It was a massive creature, 3 times the size of a normal Vorath, connected to the collective consciousness through biological cables that spread across the ground like roots. Explosives ready, Sarah whispered. The team planted charges around the creature. Then they ran. The explosion lit up the night. The coordination point died in fire, and across the battlefield, thousands of Vorath suddenly lost their connection to the hive. They stumbled, confused, attacking each other or standing still like broken machines. Back at the outpost, Alex Chun watched the chaos spread through enemy lines. He turned to his soldiers. "Now," he said, "push them back now." The humans surged over the walls, followed by every Zillion who could still fight. They charged into confused swarm and began cutting them down. For the first time in 3 days, the defenders became attackers. Private James Walker led a squad through a cluster of disoriented Vorath. He moved without thinking, his body acting on instinct and training. He shot enemies before they could react. He saved soldiers who were in danger. He led. A Vorath claw caught him in the side. Pain exploded through his body. He fell, blood pouring from the wound. RYL appeared beside him, pulling him behind cover. "James, stay with me." James looked down at his wound. It was bad. He knew it was bad. "Get me up," he said through clenched teeth. "You are hurt. You need medical help." "I can still see. I can still talk. Get me up." Arwell helped him lean against a rock. James picked up his rifle and began directing his squad with hand signals and shouted commands. He could not walk, but he could still fight. Dawn came on the 3rd day. The Vorath were retreating for the first time anyone could remember. Sarah Mitchell and her team had made it back to the outpost, wounded but alive. The ground around the walls was covered with enemy dead, and then ships appeared in the sky. For a terrible moment, everyone thought it was more Vorath, but the ships bore alliance markings. Supreme Commander Vax had finally come. The relief fleet descended and fresh troops poured out. They expected to find ruins and corpses. Instead, they found humans and Zillions standing together on walls that had never fallen. Vax landed and walked through the outpost in silence. He saw the dead Vorath pile like mountains. He saw the human soldiers, bloody and exhausted, but still standing. He saw War Leader Kale, ancient and proud, fighting beside creatures half a size. He found Commander Alexchen sitting on a broken wall, drinking water from a canteen. "This is impossible," Vax said. "You had 2,000 soldiers. They sent 50,000. Alex looked up at the Supreme Commander. "They sent 50,000. We killed 40,000. The rest ran." "How?" Alex thought about the question. He thought about Marcus Riley holding a breach alone. He thought about Sarah Mitchell leading a suicide mission through enemy lines. He thought about James Walker refusing to stop fighting even with a hole in his side. "We do not know how to quit," Alex said simply. Vax stared at the human for a long time. Then he did something he had never done before. He bowed his head to a member of another species. "I was wrong about your people," Vax admitted. The old stories were not exaggerations. They were understatements. He straightened and looked at the battlefield one more time. The Vorath had been running from something. For the first time in the war, the swarm had met something it could not consume. "Commander Chun," Vax said formally, "I am requesting that human soldiers be transferred to the main front lines. We need you where the fighting is worst." Alex finished his water and stood up slowly. His body screamed with pain. His mind begged for sleep. "We accept," he said. "Point us at the enemy and we will do the rest." Behind them, the sun rose over Xylos. Human and Zillion soldiers stood together, watching the light spread across the rocky plains. The myths had become real, and the Real was more terrifying than any myth could be. 6 months had changed everything. After Xylos, word spread across the galaxy. The myth species was real. The humans had held against impossible odds. The Vorath could be beaten. More humans came from Terra. Thousands of them, then tens of thousands. They joined the Alliance forces and began pushing back against the swarm. World after world was reclaimed. The crimson tide that spread across the star maps began to shrink. Commander Alex Chin now led a joint human Zillion strike force. He had been promoted 3 times in 6 months, not through politics, but through results. Every battle he fought, he won. Every world he defended, he held. Now, the final battle was approaching. The Alliance fleet gathered at the edge of Vorath space. Thousands of ships from a dozen species, all aimed at one target, the Vorath homeworld, the heart of the swarm, the center of the collective consciousness. Alex stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking at the tactical display. The enemy had gathered everything they had left for this final defense. It would be the bloodiest battle of the war. War leader Kale stood beside him. The old warrior had refused to leave Alex's side since Xylos. He called himself Alex's advisor, but everyone knew he simply wanted to fight beside humans until the end. The old myth spoke of this moment. Kale said quietly, "They said humans would return when the galaxy needed them most. I thought they were stories to give children hope. Now I believe they were prophecy." Alex shook his head. "We are not prophecy. We are just people who refuse to die. That is what makes you more than any prophecy could promise." The fleet jumped into Vorath space. The enemy was waiting. The battle was chaos from the first moment. Vorath ships swarmed in every direction, fighting with desperate fury. They knew this was their end. They would not go quietly. Human soldiers boarded enemy stations and fought through corridors filled with screaming monsters. The zillion warships provided cover fire, while human strike teams pushed deeper into enemy territory. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell led the ground assault on the homeworld surface. She had survived Xylos and a dozen battles since. She had become a legend among both humans and Zillions. Her team landed near the central hive structure. The goal was simple: reach the Queen and end the war. They fought through waves of Vorath defenders. The creatures threw themselves at the attackers without care for their own lives. Sarah lost soldiers with every step forward. At last, she reached a massive chamber deep inside the hive. There, surrounded by thousands of her children, sat the Vorath Queen. She was enormous, her body swollen with the biological machinery that connected her to every Vorath in existence. Sarah raised her weapon. A Vorath guard struck her from behind. The blow sent her flying across the chamber. Her rifle skidded away. Before she could rise, more guards were on her. "Go!" she shouted to her team. "Finish the mission." Her soldiers pushed forward while Sarah fought the guards with her bare hands. She broke one's neck. She stabbed another with its own claw, but there were too many. A guard's blade went through her chest. Sarah Mitchell fell. Her eyes stayed open, watching her team reach the Queen, watching them plant explosives, watching them run. She died with a smile on her face. The explosion destroyed the central collective consciousness. Across the galaxy, every Vorath felt it. The connection that bound them together snapped like a broken string. Millions of creatures suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds for the first time in their existence. They stopped fighting. They did not know how to fight alone. The war was over. James Walker, now a sergeant with scars covering his body, led the team that planted the Alliance flag on the Vorath homeworld. He thought about Sarah Mitchell as he drove the flagpole into the ground. He thought about all the soldiers who had died to reach this moment. For them, he whispered, all of this for them. Alex Chin walked through the ruins of the Vorath capital. The Queen was dead. The swarm was broken. The galaxy was safe. Supreme Commander Vax found him there standing among the destruction. "It is done," Vax said. "The war is over. The Alliance has won because of your people." Alex did not feel victory. He felt tired. He felt the weight of everyone he had lost. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we rebuild. Now we heal. And now we decide what role humanity will play in our galaxy." Alex looked at the alien sky above him. Strange stars and strange patterns. A universe that had forgotten humans existed until they came back to save it. "We did not come here for power," Alex said. "We did not come here for glory. We came because someone needed help. And helping is what humans do." Vax studied the small creature who had changed everything. "What do you want, Commander Chin?" Alex thought about the question. He thought about Terra spinning alone in space for thousands of years. He thought about his soldiers, humans who had traveled across the galaxy to fight for people they had never met. "We want to make sure no one ever has to fight alone again," he said. 1 year later, a monument was built on Xylos. It stood on the walls where humans had first proven themselves, listing the names of every soldier who had died in the war. At the center stood a statue of Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, her rifle raised, her face calm and determined. Zillion children came to the monument to learn about the humans. They heard stories about the death world called Terra and the impossible creatures who had survived it. They learned that humans felt pain but did not stop. They learned that humans formed bonds with anyone they fought beside. They learned that humans never, ever quit. Ambassador Alara stood before the monument one morning, watching a group of young Zillions listen to the stories. She remembered the first time she had seen Terra, a small blue world spinning in an unremarkable solar system. She remembered thinking that the myths could not possibly be true. Now she knew better. An older human approached her. It was Alex Chun, retired from military service, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the Alliance. His hair had gone gray. His face carried new scars. But his eyes were still calm, still patient, still certain. "What are you thinking, Ambassador?" he asked. Alara smiled. "I am thinking that the galaxy spent thousands of years believing humans were myths. Now the galaxy will spend thousands of years remembering what humans really are." Alex looked at the monument. He read the names carved in stone. He remembered their faces, their voices, their sacrifices. "What do you think we are?" he asked. Alara considered the question carefully. She thought about the small, soft creatures who had held against impossible odds. She thought about their strange persistence, their refusal to accept defeat, their impossible loyalty to each other and to strangers. "I think," she said slowly, "that you are exactly what the myths always said. Warriors who cannot be broken. Survivors who cannot be stopped. Friends who will never abandon those they love." She paused. "I think you are human. I think that is the most wonderful and terrifying thing in the universe." Alex Chin smiled. He looked up at the strange alien stars above him and felt for the first time in a very long time that he was home. Not because the stars were familiar, but because he was surrounded by friends. That was enough. That was everything. That was what humans had always needed to survive.